Welcome to the third episode of the Shaiban podcast. This is going to be a really interesting episode on the topic of performance management. We've already covered a few interesting topics that come to HR, leadership, creating a positive and happy work culture. And today we're going to dive into something which a lot of HR people spend a good deal of time thinking about and planning and executing with their team, performance management, and something that is a really important ingredient to creating an amazing work culture, one that's happy and also effective. So thank you, Michaela, again for joining me.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. Obviously bringing your wealth of experience as an HR practitioner and also a consultant in so many different industries where you've gotten your experience. So I'm really excited to have this deep dive into performance management and to give support to those HR professionals out there who might either be thinking, I haven't implemented a performance management system yet. How do I get started? And is it really worth my time? And also support for those who are already doing it and maybe struggling with certain pitfalls that are quite common and maybe also wondering about how they could improve the process to make it a better outcome for everyone involved. Welcome, Mick.
Thank you, Yaz. It's really exciting to be here for the second podcast. Third already? Yes. Oh, goodness. Especially on performance, because performance, I feel, is in some cases overrated and in many cases underrated. So in a sense, you get everything, but it's crucial to the employee experience. It's crucial to retention, and it's crucial to development and growth. So a good employee performance management system is really links everything together, from strategy all the way to the development and growth of your people and the impact and efficiency, and also the development of your leaders. So this is why it's an exciting podcast, because it brings everything into the mix.
And I just want to clarify, so when we say performance management system, we are actually talking not just about the software. Of course, we do software. We're a software company. We love that. We're building that. We're designing that. But when we talk about system here, we're not only talking about the software. We're talking about the processes you have in place, the type of questions that you ask, how you train your managers and leaders to give performance reviews, what kind of feedback they're getting, how do you analyze it after. We're talking about the whole process as a whole.
But it's interesting you mentioned the software, because it has been an interesting journey. So this is why we're here. We're here because we actually together with the team at Sherburn looked at the software and developed a platform for performance, which was inspired by our, in a sense it became an obsession of developing happy workplaces. So this is where we started from with our podcast, developing happy workplaces. It was quite interesting when we brought up the idea of happy. People thought we were going a little bit loopy sometimes, but as it grew on people, they understood that actually we spend so much time at work. We spend more time at work than with our families. And therefore, yes, work should be a happy place. It should be a place where you grow. It should be a place where you feel inspired, where you're able to make an impact, where you're able to safely express your opinions. And performance management brings this all into the fray. So developing this system, this software, and working hand in hand with the developers at Sherburn to be able to bring a product that is able to take clients and employees through the process safely and work with them as a journey and take them on this journey has been really exciting. So this is, I guess, why we're here and why we're so excited about this next phase in the development of the HR platform.
Yeah. As you're talking, I'm just remembering my intro speech at the conference that we had last year on happiness and all of the incredible statistics on just how much happiness is a game changer for productivity at the workplace, reduces sick leave. I quoted a lot of different studies. And so if anyone listening hasn't checked that out, it's available on our YouTube channel. So if you're still not sure that happiness is something to aspire for at the workplace, you might need to backtrack one or two episodes. But taking that as a given, okay, we know we want to create happy workplaces. Let's start on the point of why feedback is such a crucial ingredient to us growing as human beings and being satisfied at the workplace.
Well, feedback is essential for happiness, because how do you expect people to know where they stand if they don't have feedback? However, how good are we at giving feedback? And I'll go to the next step of saying, how good are we at receiving feedback? Now, in some cultures, people are better at receiving feedback and giving feedback than in other cultures. But we're working fundamentally in the Maltese culture, and we're not that good, let's face it, at receiving feedback, nor are we very good at giving feedback. So this is always the biggest question in performance management is how are we going to get our managers and our leaders to be able to create a safe space and craft a message that is safe, gives feedback, allows people the space to understand it, and walk out of that room in the full knowledge and confidence that they are valued and that their manager believes in them and wants them to grow.
It's hard giving feedback. I mean, even I myself
Are not great.
I would say I'm great. No, it's not about great or not. I still resist it. I still, when I know that I had to do it just before coming to this podcast, I had to give certain feedback to a member of staff that I felt that they weren't giving their all. And even though it's true and it's going to help them and it was coming from a loving place, there was still a part of me that got not even nervous, but just a bit of resistance that I have to have. It's an effort, let's say, to give someone feedback. And that's why I think it is, in a sense, the highest compliment and sort of show of respect is like, I'm going to really tell you what I genuinely feel about your work or your actions and so on. But we do need support to be able to have these conversations because our instinct is to resist it.
Yes, you know why? So in time, I've realized that people resist giving feedback because we overthink it. We overthink feedback because we think that by giving feedback, we're going to offend the person we're giving feedback to.
So feedback's not always welcome. Some people don't take feedback well, and you never know what mood the person's going to be in.
Agreed.
And
Agreed.
so on.
You never know. But at the end of the day, if I'm giving you feedback, then I need to be confident enough that I'm giving you feedback in a safe way. So that's the first issue. I always compare it to a bike. So if I teach you how to ride a bike, generally speaking, you would start with stabilizers. And to learn how to ride a bike, you then have to remove the stabilizers and you will fall a number of times. And I compare feedback to that, to the process of removing stabilizers. You will fall and you'll fail a number of times, and then slowly you become better at giving feedback. But first, we need to be comfortable with giving feedback. So if I'm not comfortable as an individual to receive feedback, then I can't expect to be comfortable to give feedback. And it's a very psychological game. So one has to first be very comfortable with themselves. And this is
Do
where...
you think that I'm going to be a bit of devil's advocate? That no matter how good and how much training we've had or whatever, there is just a natural human reaction that it is an energy-intensive thing. We need to be very present. So as a leader, you're going about your day and so on, that it's a task that doesn't inspire. So the first thing you're going to say, yes, I'm going to go and give this person difficult feedback.
Well, because our culture is not attuned to feedback. If you were to build cultures in organizations that look at feedback as something that is run of the mill and people are comfortable with feedback, even difficult feedback,
or see it even positive, even complicated,
then it would not be such an energy intensive exercise. And so this is why we built the system. This is why we look at happiness at its core, because performance management for the sake of performance management can be very destructive. Whereas performance management aimed at creating a space which is safe, a space for people to be able to explore, to become more self-aware, to better themselves, it just creates a happy, safe space to be able to receive feedback. Therefore, it's not punitive.
What would you say is the first step, right? To creating, again, as you're saying, it's not just, okay, we have a performance management system, let's choose the questions and roll this out. Like there needs to be some work done to create a culture where the people giving the feedback feel that this is something positive for them, and the people giving the feedback also feel the support of the culture that, hey, this is actually a good thing.
So recently, reminding me of a conversation I had recently with one of my clients, and they said, we decided that this year we are implementing performance management. I said, well done, but it's impossible. Because I'm a firm believer that performance management is a process. And it is a process that takes a number of years in an organization because it is a culture. One has to first develop a culture of performance management. because we are used to a very punitive culture. If you look, for example, at the relationship between performance management and bonuses, which is something now that is being phased out in some big companies, and there's a big discussion about it, to what extent should you link performance with bonus? Because what's happening is your performance is being linked to something punitive. I take from your bonus if you do something that I... But when I judge you, when I assess you, it's very, very it's very subjective. It's not objective. And so somehow you walk out of there if someone has taken something from you in terms of a performance bonus, and you feel betrayed, you feel hurt, you feel that someone's taken something from you. But if I were to start, I would say, let's start from the beginning. And the beginning necessitates a good vision for the company. Where are we going? Where are we at? And where are we going? How can you build a performance plan without knowing where you're going? How can you assess people on what skills, on what performance, if you don't know where you're going? So that's where we need to start from. And there are far too many companies that miss out on this step. They miss out on strategy. They miss out on the objectives coming from the top and then cascading them down. And then secondly, what skill set do you need? And you can start really from very basic conversations. I'm going to give you feedback. Let's have an open conversation on where are we at today and where are we going? That's where it starts from. Without having the very laborious task of, I'm going to remove something from your bonus, or I'm going to give you a rating. You know, the minute you start with ratings is the minute you start creating a few dissonances. And then if you're not prepared and if you don't have those safe spaces, then it can go really, really wrong.
So what you're saying is like the first step needs to be to hone in on your values and then create a review system, which is actually a reflection of those values and helping people to do the self-reflection, to ask the question of whether their work and also their skill set is serving the mission and the values of this company in the right way.
Yes, what added value? So for example, I can give you an example. You have a team of accountants and you're assessing them on technical skill. And there's one accountant that doesn't reach the level of technical skill. That concludes a company or concludes a job in much longer time. So in terms of efficiency, and we have all these metrics on efficiency, in terms of efficiency, they're less efficient. And so on that basis, they will probably fail their performance process. On that basis, they will probably get less bonus. But then if you take a step back, you realize that the team is a better team because of that individual. So the individual walks in with a smile, passes jokes, entertains, creates a spirit of fun, creates safety within the team, is always there to pick up the slack, to be able to lend a hand. And then you realize, I can't put a price on that. So should that be part of the performance process? And this is where we need to decide. How do we assess? What are we assessing? Are we assessing technical? Of course, it's much easier to assess technical skill.
I think that the movement, globally is to mix, right? The technical skill and also the value set, again, like friendliness and happiness and teamwork and so on, and come up with a holistic view of looking at what someone adds to a team and then giving them the feedback on where their strengths lie. I take your point that sort of like the idea is to sort of create safety so that you're looking at it from a place where there's enough width and breadth in the discussion to be able to make people feel like they will be seen, not just in a very narrow lens, but for the whole breadth of what it means to be human and what they add to their team.
But also give people the space to actually understand what they add to their team. Because you'd be surprised, even conversations such as, what do you add to the team? What do you bring to the table? Even these are difficult conversations. Yeah. So because we don't have the self-awareness, sometimes even the confidence to be able to say, you know what, I bring life to the team. I bring a spirit to the team that you can't quantify.
Yeah. It's very hard, actually.
It's very hard.
We're not good at owning our own skills and our own talents.
No, we're not. And the process that we're trying to work with when it comes to performance management and the software that we've built and that we've worked on for these many months is doing exactly this. It's working with people and having a software that enables a culture that allows for these conversations, that actually brings them up.
You mentioned that situation of sort of people being maybe judged overly harshly on technical skill and so on. But one of the things we've also found, particularly in our organization, is that sometimes we're also too nice in our feedback, that we have almost too much empathy and compassion. As part of our performance review system, we created this 9-box grid, which allows management to analyze based on a rating system where your employees lie on an axis of performance and potential. And obviously, within any organization, there should be a spread. If everyone is low performance and low potential, something's wrong. Same time, if everyone is high, then there's also something wrong. And it was really interesting for us, obviously, when we created the system.
Everybody was high.
And yes, we had 71% of our team in high performance, high potential, which told me as a leader that there is still something wrong with my performance review, because people should be getting fair reviews, and there were definitely people who were given high performance, high potential, who were not high performance, high potential. But sometimes as leaders, we're empathetic, we want to support. We find it very difficult to say the truth if we feel like it's not going to be received well. And both of those two extremes have the same root of sort of feedback is not that easy to give. So it can be overly harsh or also overly nice. So the question is okay, how do we empower our leaders to be fair and safe?
It is one of the most challenging things. As I said, how many leaders are ready to remove the stabilizers from the bike and allow you to fall? Whereas we know, and I mean, kids teach you this. Sports teaches you this. If you don't fail, you don't succeed. The only way you're going to succeed is to fail. In one of my training sessions recently, one of my collaborators I was training said, I'm a skateboarder. And this is the first thing you learn as a skateboarder, is that you will try it hundreds of times before you will succeed. And failure is just one step closer to succeeding. But most of us have a very difficult relationship with failure. And we have a difficult relationship with failure because we don't like the way it feels. And unfortunately, our educational system is not helping with failure, because we're eliminating sports days and we're eliminating prize days. Everybody gets a medal. And this is in a sense, you're moving into the space of everybody's a winner. But how do you improve unless you fail? He who does not work does not fail. And therefore, how do we build cultures where people feel safe to fail? And this is why I love at Sherburn, one of the greatest things I've ever heard from the software developers was fail fast. I loved it. Fail fast. And it was a concept I'd never heard before, because in development, you fail fast. You work, you produce, you code, you build and test, and then you fail. It doesn't work. And so you fail fast. The decision to ditch something is very quick. Mm-hmm. Whereas most people have a relationship with failure that is very, very different. Mm-hmm. We mull over it, we worry, we beat ourselves up about it. And this is why we don't like feedback. Mm-hmm. Because we think it's a failure. We think it's a reflection on our capabilities, rather than looking at it as an open window, as an opportunity to do better.
Yeah, these are always topics that we always come back to, right? Like our ego, our sense of identity, how much we have this core need to be seen. And when the spotlight is shining on the places that we can improve, our identity gets woven in there, and we just get this resistance. And this is why I'm always banging on and preaching about how we all need so much self-awareness. And when you're in a leadership position, very often you get promoted because of technical skill. Sometimes you do get promoted out of leadership skill, but we're not really ever really equipped in how to do this kind of work and how to really sort of shine the mirror on our own behavior so that we can become better leaders. And just even the fact of noticing our discomfort, for example, today when I was, saying, okay, I'm going to have this conversation with this person, and there was a moment where I was like, oh, I could procrastinate it and then do it next time. And then I had to sort of notice, this is a bit uncomfortable for you, so you'd prefer to procrastinate it, but really it's not going to be for the good of the person, for yourself, or for the company, so just do it now. But that awareness of even noticing that you're uncomfortable, even within a conversation, and owning it and normalizing it, and it being okay, actually takes off already a lot of the pressure. But we're not very good at creating the environment for this to be done in the corporate world. We're still, I think, operating from a place of, to be vulnerable at work is a negative. It opens you up for threat. And also I recognize that some people do work in toxic environments and have had a history of their vulnerability being abused at the workplace. So it's such a fine balance in trying to find our authenticity in the workplace and trying to really notice these places where we get super uncomfortable.
But also, I think adding to that, and you're so right, but adding to that, it is, to what extent are we able, each and every one of us, to take responsibility for where we're at?
Again, not something that we're super great at.
No, we're terrible at it. I know I was terrible at it. I probably still am to a certain extent. But, if I look back at my work history, I could see a very, very strong pattern. And obviously, when you look at a pattern, the only thing the pattern says is that the common denominator is you. Therefore, I am the problem. So how many of us are ready to actually start from ourselves? We have some very good leaders. We also have some very bad leaders. And we have generally, leaders that are trying their very best. I can't believe that, the majority of leaders really are waking up every single morning and doing their very best of what they know. And leaders will change according to who they're leading. Therefore, it's also each and every one of us' responsibility to be able to give feedback as well as receive. So performance management is an opportunity for us to be able to do that, is to give feedback and receive feedback, if the culture allows it. Yeah. And therefore, at the beginning, you asked me, where do we start from? We start with the culture. We start with setting the tone. If we believe in performance management and the performance management that is going to enable our people to thrive, then let's start with setting the tone at the top. Let's allow discussion. Let's allow dissent. Let's allow people to contradict. Let's give people space. Because only by giving people space can we bring the best out in them.
Yeah. I mean, most HR professionals, HR leaders listening to this would probably look at their organization and say, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I have some managers who are great leaders and great at giving feedback. I have some who are, average. And then I have a couple who maybe are really terrible at it. And then there's also management, right? So some of them might be really on board with performance being really important for their organization. Again, it might be a mixed bag as well. So how do we also empower HR professionals to bring this agenda forward within their companies, sometimes even having to persuade management? But I think the harder part sometimes is actually persuading the leaders themselves to invest their time into becoming better at giving feedback, analyzing, right? Like with the analytics now, we can see, right? So in our organization, it was really easy for me to put the data on the screen and say, guys, before we put the data up here, what do you think would be a reasonable spread in our organization? How many would you expect in each of the 9 boxes? And then, okay, put the data up. This is where we are. You can go down by department, right? So we'd say, okay, this department, everyone's in the top box. And that kind of gives you a platform to be able to discuss it. But it's time. Leaders need, and HR professionals don't always have the backing of the leaders to say, yes, this is worthy of my time.
But not only that, if I were a leader, why would I mark my team down if I need my team to perform?
Yes.
So the relationship between motivation and assessment needs to be re-looked at. We need to reevaluate. Because I give you feedback that is necessarily bringing you down, does not mean I don't believe in you. Does not mean I don't think you're good. It just means I think there's room for improvement. So this is the balance that one needs to keep.
I have to say, in my experience with Trevor, one of the hardest feedbacks that I had to give actually resulted in the best increase in performance over the coming year. It was tough. It was tough feedback to deliver. It was tough to receive for the other person. It was a little bit wobbly, but we got there in the end. And actually that sort of real sincere, And I think sincerity is really key in this. And I think this is where sometimes we go wrong, that often there are so many different agendas. And you mentioned the bonus. I'm still not totally sure how I feel about. I understand the link between, assessing someone's performance and then making a judgment call on whether that increased performance, adds up to an increased bonus. At the same time, I totally hear what you're saying and think actually decoupling it really creates a lot of safety and allows people to be able to receive that feedback and then also adjust, in order to reach certain targets or reach future bonuses. So it's a complicated situation.
Also, because in performance, you see different types of people. Depending on their personality, you have those that are very, very, very focused on their goals. So I'm given 3 goals, and I'm going to just laser focus on those goals, irrespective of everything else around me. Then you have what I like to call the Mother Teresas of this life, of this world, that will look not just at their goals, but at the context of their goals. And very often, more times than one would like to actually admit, those goals become fluid. You shift goals. It's highly unlikely, unless you have goals with sales targets, this, that, and the other, but even they shift. It's highly unlikely that the goals that are set at the beginning of the year are going to remain exactly the same 6 months down, because things change, our environments change. And if we're too laser focused, we're unable to create that agility. So this is one thing that managers are not able to process, is the bigger picture. They're not trained. So I don't blame managers. We don't train them at looking at the bigger picture, at giving people space, at understanding the agility. What was the impact? Fine, you didn't reach your target, but you added value in so many other areas. And today, performance management systems actually do give space for this. How did your goal change? How did it shift? What happened here? You're able to document it. Because let's face it, one of the biggest challenges I always found with performance management was, oh my God, I have to remember what happened 6 months ago.
Sometimes a year ago.
Sometimes a year ago. It's crazy. So you're there, and the only thing you remember is what happened last week. And you're basing your judgment and your feelings on what happened last week. And, people go through difficult times. Sometimes private things happen, personal tragedies happen, and someone's performance slips. And you're judging them on a very short attention span. And therefore, for us to be able to document everything, to be able to be fair, as you said, rightly said, then we need to document. But we need to have a documentation system that actually enables a happy performance process, not a punitive performance process.
Yeah. So in your opinion, how often should companies do performance reviews?
So I'll make a distinction. Performance reviews, the actual physical performance reviews, once or twice a year, because they're physically exhausting. They take a lot of time. So let's be practical. Let's do it well, and let's do it once or twice a year. So you have one big performance review end of year and a check-in mid-year. However, backed up by regular check-ins. It could be team check-ins, and it could be one-on-one check-ins.
One of the questions that Gallup ask actually when they're collecting feedback is, have you received feedback in the last 7 days? And when you think about it, like as a measure of efficiency and efficacy of feedback, 7 days, at work, they fly by. But I think it's actually a really beautiful measure as a leader to ask yourself, have I given, no matter how small or how big, a piece of feedback to my direct reports within the last 7 days? Do you feel like that's a good barometer, or is it overkill?
No, it's good, because feedback is the most impactful when it's given in real time and in the moment. And also, by feedback, we don't necessarily mean feedback for mistakes. So this is another misnomer. Feedback means if you did a good job, well done on your good job. How many times do we turn around and say, well done? That was a great sale. That was a great piece of software. It's kind of expected that you perform, but when you don't perform, you're given feedback. So, I go through lots of feedback sessions and performance reviews, and this is the thing that encourages me the most. On the one hand, is that we've become more aware about feedback. Recently, I saw the differences in cultures. For example, the American culture is quasi-obsessed with feedback. They love feedback. They give feedback very readily, even if you don't want it. But they do know how to take feedback. And then you have some managers that are actually very good at giving that feedback. So when you have a good manager that gives good feedback, they're able to use and craft their words. Remember, feedback face-to-face is also very different to feedback in written. So this is another distinction that we don't make.
Yeah. I think in a sense, I mean, I'm thinking now back to René's words, right, about his classic story that he always tells, that, in performance we get this huge list of what we're doing wrong and we don't really ever focus on what we do right and really amplifying what we do right as opposed to what we're doing wrong. And, I agree with that, but I also know that someone reflecting to you the things you're not seeing of where you can improve can be a real game changer. And in a sense, like, all feedback should be positive feedback in the sense that it should always make a person feel valued and seen. Because even when someone is telling me, oh, you did this, I would have approached it maybe a different way, it can still be a positive feedback. And it's still a show of care, it's a show of attention, it's a show of mentorship and support. And maybe that's also just something that we need to keep in mind. And I totally agree. We really need to catch people doing things right a lot more. I notice myself as well. Sometimes you, as a leader, you assume that people know that they've done a good job and they don't know when they haven't done a good job. So you always feel you need to sort of support them. But when they do a good job, like, oh, we all know that they did a good job. But it goes such a long way when you just acknowledge the contribution that a person has made. I've found it really, really powerful.
So one of the things, you're perfectly right. So one of the things I have discovered, and this is especially after COVID, is that people are craving human connection. They're craving being seen and being valued. And that craving, I don't know where it comes from, really. I haven't analyzed it in depth, but we've kind of lost our understanding of how people communicate. So my take is, let's go back to basics. Think about it for 5 seconds. Something good happens and you send it on your WhatsApp chat. And you get an emoji. Whoa, wow. Nobody had the time to write a word. I get an emoji. It kills me. It really, really kills me. We've lost our sense of giving people proper support, proper feedback. We think a little heart emoji is enough, or a little care emoji is enough, or a thumbs up. But it's not. To what extent? And so performance management gives us a great opportunity to put everything in words, to speak, to connect. But not performance management with my messages coming in on my phone and my phone buzzing. Really quality conversations. They don't have to be long. They just have to be quality. And what I've also noticed is during these quality conversations, there's no need for a long list because it's impossible. If I give you feedback and I say, look, Yaz, I have feedback on 1, 2, 3, 4. Thank you very much. If you walk out that door, you're going to think to yourself, 1, 2, 3, 4. If I knew how to do them, I would already be doing them. So performance management is a process. This time, I'm going to focus on 1, maybe 2, but I'm also going to give you an understanding of how to get there. I'm going to be there supporting you along the way because that's my job. So this is really, the way we communicate is extremely, extremely important. What we say, how we say it, but more so the connection. I can be really, really tough and still not make you feel bad.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, as you're talking, like, I project into the future at, us becoming more AI and more virtual and really losing the human-to-human connection. And I think in our busy lives, you're absolutely right. Performance reviews are actually a really beautiful time where we can actually give that human-to-human connection. And when that feedback is delivered sincerely, a person can still feel really cared for and really nourished by the conversation. But we have a lot of work to do as leaders to make ourselves into the right people who are actually comfortable to give that level of connection and attention and deliver our feedback comfortably. So that is a process of ongoing self-development that you need to do as a leader to be able to fulfill that role.
But I think first it is actually acknowledging it. recognizing the fact that technology has connected us more, but also has provided a platform to disconnect us. It's given us the easy way out. Think about it. Someone passes away, they announce it on social media, and you send a note. You write on social media. But that doesn't remove the need for a call or a visit.
It's not true connection.
It's not true connection. But what it does is it eases our connection. And performance management is much the same. You know, a system and a software is extremely important because what it does is it manages the system. But
Creates
it will
the base.
never,
It's the foundation.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it won't replace the face-to-face.
To make sure that we don't resist it and we know that it's scheduled and it's going to pop up and tell
And
us.
it reminds us.
You have to do it.
You have to do it.
Yeah.
And it keeps reminding you that you have to do it.
Yeah.
A good leader should not need a reminder to give feedback to their staff
Yeah.
because it's important. They recognize the need for it, you know. And today, in fact, if you see even in sports, feedback is changing in sports. Before, you had a culture of, point out people's mistakes, shout, scream. And that's very, you see it still, but it's moving out.
And I think, the whole kind of pendulum swinging to totally the other way to like, now we don't give feedback is also a reaction to that way of giving feedback that was very dominating and authoritarian. And in some ways we need the pendulum to swing back into the middle where there is feedback given. We do differentiate between, following certain values and not, but that feedback is delivered not in a way that the person feels, crushed and dominated, but feels actually this person is my biggest supporter and my biggest support system along the way to me growing as a human being.
Today I was having a conversation with someone I mentor, and he informed me. He told me that he was reading the book of the CEO of Asda, who went in and literally transformed the culture. And what he said was, it's true, it's really interesting. We've gone from a post-World War culture of dominance and control, which worked because it was military. It still works in a crisis, by the way. That's exactly what you need in a crisis, decision, control, dominance. To now moving into a culture of working with people, allowing space, collaborative.
Yeah.
Challenging. You can challenge, of course, you need to challenge, but in safety.
Yeah. I mean, the traditional hierarchies are a lot safer in some ways, right? Like I use my authority, I dominate you, I tell you what to do and you follow me. This new way, which is much more collaborative and much more egalitarian, actually requires us to really step up as human beings and not just rely on our authority or our title for someone to swallow the feedback, but actually that they really feel that they are cared for and that they really feel the human connection, which in a way is a really beautiful opportunity for us in, again, an age where we're living very busy lives, to remind us to stop and give our presence and connect with the human beings in front of us.
But to be honest with you, I don't think, I said this when it came to gender, and I'll say this when it comes also to styles of leadership. The younger generation, our youth, the future of our companies, on which we rely on for good resources coming in, will not aspire to be part of our organizations if we don't shift our way of doing performance. That's the truth.
Yeah.
They don't respond very well to command and control.
Yeah.
And therefore, we need to learn how to shift what we've learned, unlearn it, and relearn a new way which will attract the younger generation, because that is what's going to sustain our businesses.
Yeah, and it's a win-win, right? Like we give you feedback in a way that feels safe. We're helping you grow, and then you're also being able to contribute better to the mission and purpose of the company.
Exactly.
Everybody wins. Mick, I think we could talk about performance forever, but I think this is a good place to kind of bring it to a close. I think if I could sum up, definitely I feel inspired by this conversation, just to remember how important feedback is as a leader. And, I just want to let everyone know who's listening that this is something that we're both very passionate about, and we're going to be launching our Shaiban Academy soon, and this is something that we're going to be supporting people to be able to do, even training leaders and how to do the self-reflection work, how to notice their discomfort, and how to be able to give more effective feedback. So I'm looking forward to us taking our experience and also making that real into being able to support companies to make this transition into a performance management culture that is safe, collaborative, and effective for the organization itself.
And also, just on a last note, fear not if your performance process is not perfect. It will never be perfect.
Ours isn't perfect.
No, it will never be perfect, but it is a process.
Yeah.
It's something that takes, a couple of years to build, to craft. As long as it's well intentioned, then it will eventually get there.
Yeah, and we're always bringing new people into a system, right? So we're always going to need the need to train the future leaders of tomorrow is actually infinite. We're always training people, and there's that famous quote that says, "Well, what if I train someone and they leave?" And then the person replies, like, what if you don't train them and they stay? So I think it's something that actually is a really beautiful part of the job of the HR team and all leaders across an organization to invest in these skills, the inner skills for their organizations.
I always say, as long for the period of time that you've been with my organization, you can look back and say that you learned and you made an impact. And for me, that is gold.
Yeah.
No matter how long you decide to stay.
Agreed. So thank you everyone
you.
for listening to this little bit of a jamming about performance reviews. And if you are interested in finding more about how our products can help you, then just visit our website. We're launching new modules all the time, and we're just really happy to be working on our performance management system and improving it every day. And your feedback also helps us make better products. So we're always open to that on our ideas portal. So thank you everyone for listening, and see you next episode.
Thank you.